students at the Kellogg School, the grad students, took on a challenge of their own, and it's called Hear My Innovation. And they had a number of students apply, and I think they self-monitored and self-chose a couple of winners. And we're going to have one of the winners come up today and talk to you about her innovation story. And we're going to have another one come up, I think, Friday. Okay, because we're running short on time, so we've kind of moved the agenda. Manasa, you want to come up here to the stage, and I've got a mic here on the table for you. Manasa Yeturu, you okay there? Is a second-year Kellogg student, and you're going to tell your story. I'm not going to say any more.
Well, as a former teacher, what an honor to share the stage with three brilliant and articulate young ladies.
Yeah,
Thank
amazing.
you for that. Civic innovation. Civic innovation? Usually you hear those words not in the same breath, and I'm assuming a lot of you in the room are thinking oxymoron. But I'm here to say, take a minute and stay with me for these next 5 as I walk you through my experience. So, often when you hear those words, these are some other words that might show up. Transportation, citizen engagement, technology. Is it any of these things? Is it all of those things? I'm here to tell you that while it might be any or all of those, that the need is real. As our former president said, and as our current president is showing us, democracy is messy. Democracy is complicated, it's convoluted, and as I think it's a definition of a wicked problem. A problem that isn't going to necessarily be solved in our lifetime, but is something that I really wanted to tackle. And as you know, we all tackle things with our own toolkit. So my name is Manasa Yeturu. I'm a second year. I'm going to be graduating Kellogg in a very short amount of time. And I'm also a design student. And to me, design thinking, which I don't need to explain to this crowd, means stories. It means rooting the ability to address a problem with empathy and by understanding real human needs. And so that's how I approach the problem of civic innovation. What was my problem, though, actually? So, last summer, I had the opportunity to work with the former Attorney General of California, Kamala Harris, who's now the senator. And the problem was, how might we design and launch an innovation unit for the California Department of Justice? Whoa. When I first heard of that opportunity, I thought, whoa, that's a really big question. It hasn't been done at the state level before, and it was for a leader that I really, really respected. So I wanted to bring my expertise and my world of design to that problem. So design at the DOJ, where do you even begin? Well, I began in what I believe, in stories. So I pitched the team that I really wanted to interview and understand what was actually happening at the Department of Justice. We only had 10 weeks to actually launch this unit, and the pressure I got was pretty immense. They were like, you don't have time to hear stories. Why do you want to hear stories? And my answer was, well, if we don't hear from the people that are actually experiencing them, we're going to end up creating a solution that isn't practical and that's not going to be done. So let me tell you a story. And the reason I put coffee cups up here is because I spent a lot of time drinking a lot of coffee with a lot of people. But one that really sticks out to my mind is this woman named Carla. It might have been my first couple days when I met Carla, and she was sitting under piles and piles of paper. It was a Monday morning, and she already looked exhausted. I could see a couple nods in the room. And so I walked in, and I said, hey, Carla, I got you a cup of coffee. Do you have 15 minutes to talk? She looked at me, exasperated. I was coming from the executive office, and she's like, sure. Sit down, and ask her a question. I said, what has your experience been like? What have been your highs, What have been your lows? What have been your greatest challenges in your time here? In your 20 plus years here? She didn't want to tell me what the plus meant, but it was 20 plus. And I saw her eyes light up. And she put her pen down, she put her paper down, and we ended up talking for 2 hours. Because no one in those 20 plus years had asked her that question. And she runs the PIU unit at the DOJ, which is the public inquiry unit. So employers send their background checks there, and she gets a piece of paper because it has not caught up to the 21st century. And that was just the tip of the iceberg of the problems that this woman had faced in her time at the Department of Justice. So what did I learn over my 10 weeks at the Department of Justice? I learned that while businesses and governments aren't the same thing, they actually have a few shared insights. They worked in silos across the DOJ. They were not empathetic to each other's needs. They were ineffective at communicating within and across teams, and they suffered from a lack of knowledge of organizational goals and processes. And Carla's story was just one of the hundreds that I heard that summer. So the exciting piece is, we launched the unit, it happened in 10 weeks, and as you can see, our approach was user-centered, data-driven, digital-forward, delivery-focused. What do all of those words mean? In short, they mean bureaucracy hacking. I think we're at the start of this phase where we're really going to need an innovation mindset to tackle this really, really complicated thing that we call democracy. And we're at the start because I think there's a lot we can do with bureaucracy hacking, but it's just the beginning. Where do I see the future going? Where I see it going is where Carla can actually connect with the constituents, where we're not just helping her digitize her papers, but where she can have citizen conversations and really be able to help those at the other end. She's told me that she's never missed a day of work, except the day her dad died, because she really, really cares about the person on the phone. And that story to me is why I want to work on this problem. Because government affects some of the most vulnerable parts of our society, and it tackles issues that businesses can't even begin to touch. And so my possibility and the world that I want to create is one that's citizen-centric, where civic innovation is not just bureaucracy hacking, it's not just updating technology, it's not just getting us up to the 21st century, but it's putting citizens at the center of our government. And so I'll leave you with one of my favorite quotes and one of my favorite cartoons. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them. So I ask you to join me in creating a world where we put citizens at the center and we move beyond a bureaucracy hack. Thank you.
Thank you. A citizen-centric government. You know, those of us in business often talk about customer-centric businesses, so we understand that really well, don't we? But what an idea. The other takeaway for me on that, Manasa, is the power of a conversation and how important it is to have it. In closing, the only thing I will leave you with is this. As parents and mentors, one of the most important things we do is how we raise our kids, how we teach our kids, how we coach our kids. As leaders in an organization, we need to make sure we listen, we have dialogue, we learn from them, and we actually include them in the conversation. I don't know what this forum would be like without the voice of the youth in this room. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
I'd like to introduce another one of our kin student leaders who is retiring from Kellogg and moving on to the next moment of her life, Sam Trebesch, and she will follow up on our notion of trust. Sam, the floor is yours. Oh, uh-oh.
I'm good.
Good.
Here we go. Hi everyone, good morning. I am so honored to be here, to be in kin for the last couple years, so thank you, Rob, for that. And also, just to follow up on the amazing presentations we've had about trust in the last session, people like Ken and Jason who are working so hard to really build trust across organizations. But I want to take us and focus a little more internally to the people closest to us and talk about a lack of trust that I've seen in parenthood. And some of you with teenagers may have some stories of your own, but my daughter's only 4, and yet I still have stories. I knew my daughter Sari was a social butterfly from the moment she was born. Even now, at age 4, we go on vacation for a week, and she is literally crying because she misses her friends whilst making a dozen new friends on vacation. What I didn't know is that my daughter can swim 25 yards across the pool. She reads at a first grade level. And last weekend, she ran a 5K in 32 minutes, putting her own mother to shame. If you would have asked me a few months ago about any of that, I would have flat out told you that my daughter has no athletic ability, again, gets it from her mother, and she's too busy talking nonstop to even have a moment to think about anything academic. It took someone from the outside to point out to me, sometimes even a complete stranger could point out before I could see it, that Sari was ready to take on these new challenges. So I've been asking myself, what is it besides terrible parenthood that Sari's own mother would not be able to recognize and foster these natural talents? Thinking about this took me back to my last position as a teacher with the UN. I was a department chair and one of the few people that my boss really trusted for advice. Even so, I think I had a lot of innovations, but still my true personality never really shone outside the classroom. And this was never more evident to me than when I gave my farewell speech to all the staff. I had the entire room in fits of laughter, and at the end, my boss just said to me, "Wow, I never knew you were funny." And it was a shock to me. It dawned on me that the trust that we thought we had built together was actually very superficial. It only applied to work roles, to competence, as Ken talked about in the last session. And I think I'm doing making those same mistakes now with my daughter. Just as my boss knew I was a great math teacher, but didn't translate that to the fact that I could be a public speaker, I know that my daughter has these excellent verbal skills, but yet I didn't realize she'd be ready to read. I think we do the same thing in a business context. We know our employees are good, even great. We trust them 100% to do the roles that they've been hired to do. But it's almost as though we're too close, we're too narrowly focused in order to see how remarkable these people really are. We assume that our employees are content to be challenged within the context of the roles we've defined for them, but in actuality, they are poised, ready to hurdle over those cubicle walls and into the next great innovation for our company. All they need is for someone to set off that starter's gun and give them room to run. I could tell you story after story about some of my quietest students over the years who made earth-shattering impact when someone just asked for their opinion. And these people would have made those same contributions eventually, I'm totally sure of it. But the point is that the innovations happen so much faster when an inspired leader took the time to really show trust to those students and to give them license and a word of confidence. As you engage here in kin and back at work, I would encourage you to think about this and work on building deeper trust with the people closest to you. Identify those humble, hard workers who may have more to offer than they let on, and give them that push of encouragement. You may just find that your world becomes a funnier, brighter, and more impactful place. Thank you.
We have a tradition in the kin which is called Message to the Kin. We offer our graduating, seniors, our graduating MBAs from the student leadership team 2 minutes to say anything they want to you. So be prepared. I hope you didn't wrong any of them. I'm going to start with Solon, Christensen, Szalanski, who is actually a tech industry guy, and so it's been nice having him with us. Now, his 2-minute message to the kin apparently will be 3 minutes, but that's been pre-approved. So, with that, Solon, the stage is yours.
Morning. I'd like to start off with a little participation. Who here has had pad thai? Pretty good. Who here has had an amazing pad thai? A bit fewer. So, an amazing pad thai is defined by its balance. Unfortunately, they're pretty rare. Usually what happens is the sauce goes off. The sauce should be a great balance of sweet, sour, and salt. Similarly, in our own lives, we all look for balance, but we often struggle to get there. So today I'd like to use the balance of a perfect pad thai sauce as a way to talk about some lessons we can learn about personal balance. I learned the following recipe from Cosma. Cosma is a Thai expat who teaches a cooking school. Cosma is a notoriously strict teacher. She would never hesitate to try a dish I was making, shake her head and say, "This is not Thai." So, I hope I get this recipe right. Three key things are in this recipe: fish sauce, tamarind, and palm sugar. First, fish sauce, 3 parts. Fish sauce, for those of you who don't know, is what happens when you combine anchovies and salt and let it all ferment in the sun. What comes out is a deliciously salty, yet pretty rank smelling liquid. Fish sauce has a lot of salt, and as all the cooks in the audience know, salt is one of the most critical ingredients in cooking. Salt, however, is not necessarily about adding seasoning, but more about bringing what's already there. Similarly, in our own lives, when we're often striving for balance, I found myself trying to add too much, trying to find additional things to do. But ultimately, what's often been useful is to instead pause, reflect, and focus on what I already have. Second, 3 parts tamarind. Tamarind is a pretty sour, bean-like pod. It's an acquired taste at first, and for me, when I first tried it, I didn't like it. I was pretty fascinated, however, by the fact that other people just absolutely raved about it. So over time, I tried to incorporate it into my cooking more and more, and I've grown to really appreciate the sour flavors that can add to complex dishes. Similarly, we all gain by challenging our own assumptions and having new experiences. One of the things is that those new experiences often give is new perspective and insights wherein we can redefine what our current definition of balance is. Through that redefinition, we get closer to more self-improvement. Last, 2 parts palm sugar. Palm sugar outside of Thailand usually comes in big hard bricks that you literally need to break with a hammer. You can substitute brown sugar, but as Cosmo would say, that is not Thai. In Thai cooking, palm sugar, its purpose is not necessarily to add sweetness, however. Instead, it's to tame and help people appreciate the chilies that are always present. Similarly, in our own lives, I found that by using the sweet experiences that I've had, not just pursuing them because of their sweetness, but to maintain and basically overcome the chilies and challenges that I encounter, through that, I learned to have better equanimity in the face of challenges. So, with that, 3 ingredients. 3 parts fish sauce, 3 parts tamarind, and 2 parts palm sugar. The blend of these either difficult or rank-smelling ingredients creates something really magical. Similarly, in our own lives, we can gain from these ingredients. So I encourage you, next time you have pad thai, remember those 3 lessons. First, focus on the basics. Second, remember to challenge your assumptions. And third, use the sweet things in life to help overcome life's chilies. Thank you.
Thanks, Solon. That was lovely. So you just chose a venue with 200 global leaders to talk about pad thai. Well done. That's the kind of go up and get we want here at Ken. So life is a balance of sweet and rank smelling. I can attest to that. You are wise beyond your years. So with this, I'd like to introduce 2 more of our soon to retire from Kellogg students, Jonathan Chen and Anya DiGann. They've both, again, been with us for a couple of years, helping us make this happen. And so with first message to the kin, Jonathan Chen.
Thank you, Rob. It's been a great privilege to work with Rob, Matt, the King team, and other student fellows for the past 2 years, and I consider it an incredible privilege to be here with you guys. So thank you again for the opportunity. What I would like to share with you is a quick story about empathetic leadership, an experience I had. Several years ago, I worked at a traditional media company in New York. Very old school, has been around for over 100 years. The business model was being disrupted, so the company was under a lot of pressure. For my last year there, I sat next to this woman. Let's call her Jody. Jody was in her 40s. She was friendly, kind, very dedicated to her job. Then one random afternoon, I came back from a meeting and saw her desk completely cleaned out. So I turned to my coworker and said, hey, what happened? Where's Jody? And he just kind of looked at me and shrugged and said, well, she packed up her stuff, turned in her resignation, and just left. And I was confused. There was no 2-week notice, no goodbye party, not even a cake. I like cakes, but there was no cake. Nothing. And Jody, who we consider to be a lifer at this organization, for more than 20 years, she was with the company, who had 2 young children at home, who commuted every day for 2 hours from New Jersey, just packed up her stuff and left. And so later I found out the reason why she left is because she felt overwhelmed with all the changes, with new technologies, constant restructurings. She didn't feel understood, supported, or encouraged, even though she was on board with all the new initiatives. There was no feedback loop to and from the senior leaders within the company. And that hit me really hard, because for my 3 years there, I played the role of a change agent going around to different departments, trying to make new initiatives and things happen. But her departure made me realize the impact of change on the human experience. So some people may say, hey, well, if you can adapt in today's environment, you should probably just move on, the survival of the fittest, right? But for the entire year I sat next to her, for however long she was feeling unsupported, none of us around her really saw the pressure building up. So this is when I started to think a lot about and reflect on empathetic leadership. I think we all probably at some point in our lives feel overwhelmed with change, with technology. Things are moving too fast. I don't have time to learn. I'm in my 30s, and seriously, like Snapchat to me is like PS4 to my dad. I kind of get it, but I really don't. And
how many have no idea what PS4 is?
my dad is a little bit more old school than most of you innovative leaders. But the question I became really interested in is, how can we as leaders create a culture of support and listen and create a network and infrastructure that helps people learn and adapt, that allows people to be visible and speak up, that empowers people like Jody to say, hey, I need help, or hey, I don't understand this, send me to training or send me to a class. As innovation continues to accelerate, I hope leaders at all organizations can create a culture of empathy, so people like Jody can feel supported and inspired to confidently adapt and thrive in the future. Thank you.
Anya DiGann.
So here at Kin, we like fun facts. Preparing for this, I realized that exactly 2 years ago to the day, I quit my full-time job to join a dual degree MBA and Design Innovation program with Kellogg and McCormick. So let's fast forward to the last week of my last quarter, and I formally founded a text-based and entertainment startup sitting in the back of this very room at Kin Global after obsessing over it by myself for a year and a half. So a pretty smart guy, I think a lot of us know, told me to never leave synchronicity to chance. So I do think jumping after a startup right as I look to graduation feels a little bit crazy, but in no way do I think it has anything to do with chance. It's actually pretty easy for me to remember the moments over the past 2 years that got me to where I am today. Options that, yes, I purposely sought out, but changed the course of my trajectory in ways I never could have imagined. for my first meeting with Rob and him telling me that as a member of Kin, it was my duty to think as big as possible. For Carter Cass letting me sit in the back of his most oversubscribed class to just vet the concept by myself. For Justin Milano coming to campus and teaching a session that moved me from utter paralysis to building a team of 4 women and generating our first revenue in just 6 months after that. And then last night, having dinner with Nellie Galan, and telling her my vision and hearing her say I could be onto something that could revive a really struggling industry. And I only have 90 seconds up here, but that barely scratches the surface of what I've been able to experience and grow from these past 2 years. So for me, after graduation, I'll be sequestering myself at Kellogg Space at 1871 to start working full-time on our beta concept. It's called Squad Solve. It's a text-based mystery that sends clues to 2 women best friends for them to actually solve together over time and distance. Kind of like Serial meets Words with Friends, but sent over text. But Rob told me that I'm supposed to think bigger. So my broader vision is to shift how we consume entertainment from an isolated, passive observation to active participation that can be a tool to really grow and strengthen our interpersonal relationships. So I did say that pursuing a startup right after graduation feels a little bit crazy. But I can give credit to Kellogg and McCormick for giving me the tools and resources that I wanted to be successful. But I absolutely must give credit to Ken for giving me the mindset to feel confident in doing it. Being connected to the people in this room and those still trickling in from etudes last night taught me that if you can get on the other side of fear, what you think you are capable of achieving pales in comparison to what is actually possible. And that connecting the dots that other people can't see is probably the right kind of crazy to go after. So with that, I just want to thank all of you in the broader Kin community. And I look forward to staying connected as much as possible so that this next chapter is also not left to chance. Thank you.